Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 65 of Social Harmony, where today I'm joined by Matthew Gray. He is primarily a chef who's cooked for the rich and famous. He is an author, bon vivant, entrepreneur, and the host and owner of 50 Shades of Grey podcast. Now, what drew me to Matthew in the first instance is his culinary background, but listening to his work. Like with all of us, food plays a part in our lives, but he uses this as a vehicle to connect with people and showcase their stories, but bring forward social issues and such like, but in a fun and enjoyable way. It never feels heavy, it always feels like a pleasant conversation with a friend. And that's what I took from the episode while recording it. So, with that in mind, I'll let you judge for yourself, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Social Harmony. Today, I'm joined by Matthew Gray, who is a chef, bon vivant, radio personality, podcaster, and all-round good sort. So please, Matthew, can I ask you, introduce yourself to my audience?
Hey Lee, so nice to be here. Aloha.
Aloha. I should say, for the benefit of everybody out there, Matthew's in Hawaii.
Yes. Not so far, right? We're both
Yeah.
sharing an ocean.
Well, no, this is true, but it's weird. Like, usually with the recordings I do anywhere in the US, it's the middle of the night for me and the day for everyone. Whereas, yeah, with the 23-hour time gap, that makes it, we're practically on the same day, just a few hours behind how we record it. We love that.
Right, same time, just a day apart, right? Kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is good. So, maybe there can be a start of more conversations. Who knows? So there we go.
Well,
But no,
I
I was
do
going
have
to
to
say,
ask you,
yeah, sorry, please.
since you're a day ahead, I
Yeah.
want you to tell me about my future. How's tomorrow going to be for me?
Well, if it's anything like my day, it's going to be fantastic. I'll say it's my birthday in 2 days, so I booked the day off work. I went out for brunch with my girlfriend. We walked up and down the beach, sun shining, and yeah, then came home and had presents. So
That sounds like a freaking fantasy.
it's honestly, it's been such a good day. Yeah, I've even like, and for a ginger as well, I don't tan, but I've got even a little bit of a tan going on. So yeah, I think I'm winning at life today.
Wow, good for you.
Alrighty. Okay, well, I suppose as we were saying before, well, I want to find out about more about who you are. Now, I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to this because there's a lot of, I suppose, a lot of crossover. I've listened to your podcast, 50 Tastes of Grey, a number of times. Yeah, some of the episodes, given my own background in kitchens, there's a lot that I can relate to with your guests. And I mean, I suppose the good, the bad, and the ugly of that kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things I think that are fantastic that draw us in, that keep us hooked, and then yeah, sometimes not so much. So I mean, if I can ask you, what was your start in the culinary world? How did that come about?
My culinary world began when I was just a little kid. I'd watch my mom paddle around the kitchen preparing food for us when we lived
Yeah.
in New York.
Hmm.
And so she would be saying to me, go out and play, go have some fun. And I said, no, I want to watch you because I really dug the aroma and the color and the plate architecture and just how jolly and fun she was when she was cooking. So that was a completely separate world for me as a little kid. And so it all began there.
Fantastic. And so from there you carried on just, I suppose, with it as you grew up and what have you, you retained your interest in food. Did you go straight from school into a culinary arena, or what?
I'd been cooking my entire life. When I was really young, still in middle school and all that, I would prepare what we called seduction dinners for my buddies when they had their girlfriends coming over to their house.
Okay.
I'd come in, I'd prepare the food, I'd leave it for them with instructions on how to make it for the girl to warm it up or whatever, and
Hmm.
I'd get out of there. And they took all the credit, but I actually prepared it for them. So that's where I was in my teenage years. And then after that, I went on the road with the Eagles and Pink Floyd and a lot of the big bands of the day doing merchandising.
Oh,
And that was a whole lot of fun. And I then went to London, went to school for culinary arts and became a chef.
wow. And well, where did you work in London? Did you work
I
with any UK
schooled there.
stuff? Oh, okay, okay.
I
So
schooled
when
there,
you
and there was a bar called Frog's Legs in South London that I worked at, just a little bit of temporary work. But I was mostly there to go schooling. And then I made my way back to Los Angeles and uh, served an apprenticeship and started a couple food related companies and things like that. And also cooked privately for folks like Don Simpson, who was a producer of Flashdance, Beverly
yeah.
Hills Cop, Top Gun.
Hmm.
And I cooked for Robin Williams and people like that in Hollywood. So it was really a lot of fun, a lot of glamour, a lot of food, and a lot of crazy good times.
Yeah. So I mean, did you work restaurants? Because the reason I ask is how different is it working from the crazy restaurant atmosphere, it's constant on the go, to working for again somebody like Don Simpson in their environment, which would put different demands on you, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, I worked in restaurants. I worked at the Regency Club, which was a high end penthouse restaurant where we had people like Henry Kissinger and Peter Uberoth, the business titans of
Mm.
those years. And so we worked there. I began as a garde manger, and then I went into pastry,
Hmm.
and I definitely lived the life of the crazy in restaurant scene.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, just for context, what sort of time, what date around was this? Was this 80s?
Yes, it was early 80s because I went to school in London in the late 70s,
Mm-hmm.
Cordon Bleu, and then I came back to LA and started doing my whole thing throughout the 80s.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine then, because the 80s, again, quite decadent of an era. I would imagine there's a lot of, I don't know, well, for my mind, that's when a lot of restaurants and businesses such as that became more prominent. Chefs became more famous, more high profile. And I mean, were you part of that scene, given the circles you were moving in at the time?
I was part of that scene because, like I said, I was back and forth with the restaurants and then also with the Hollywood people.
Mm-hmm.
And, for the longest time throughout the 1900s, being a chef and being a cook was fine, but it was pedestrian and it wasn't honored and respected the way it became in the 1970s, 1980s, where you had the Food Channel and you had all these chefs who were now rock and roll chefs and
Yeah.
famous and all that. So what happened was the food world and the media world kind of combined and married. And so it became like once upon a time, you didn't want your kid to become a chef. And
Mm.
nowadays, it's like if your kid becomes a chef, oh boy, that's going to be a great living, great career.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of ties in with my own, because I think in England we probably caught that bug a little bit later. I mean, it seemed to start, I suppose, late 80s with Marco, and from then
Right.
tended to, it seemed to grow from there. Now, myself, I I kind of fell into the industry really. I was a bit aimless, and I was studying a wine and spirits certificate just to learn about drinks and what have you. And I became enamored by the kitchen, and it seemed to be at the time when in the UK food was becoming fashionable for people, and people were taking, like you've just said then, that being a chef was a glamorous option. There was respect there, rather than previously where food was seen as fuel and a lot of chefs were just seen as grunt cooks. It suddenly
Well,
became quite a big thing.
yeah, I think that even to this day, I think restaurants and restaurant work attracts a lot of misfits. In the
Mm,
back of the house, it's people who are maybe addicted or bad boys or bad girls, people
mm,
who didn't like to follow rules. And in the front of the house, the service people, there were
mm,
people who really didn't want to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And
yeah,
they really liked to kind of breeze in and breeze out, party late at night, and then
mm,
uh, come to work the first thing in the afternoon.
yeah,
So it's a different world, for
yeah.
those of us who've worked in the restaurants.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's sort of when I found it was. I think part as well. What attracted me to the kitchen because I I grew up quite a shy kid when I was out of my familiar circle, um, and I had my own little damage. But then in a kitchen environment, all of a sudden, I had some power. I had status, and like you said, there were all anybody who shows up is not you're not bothered about the background as long as they've got the knives and they're there on time and they'll work. Then anybody could, in theory, anybody could succeed in that kitchen environment as long as they were, willing to put in the work and the hours. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I suppose, like as we've said before, there are always casualties of that. Those that stay too long, those that, when service finishes, are always first at the bar, etc. I mean,
a lot of
with
drinking, a
that,
lot of smoking,
yeah,
but that's the payoff for the hard work and that rush of adrenaline you go through when you're working in the
mm,
back.
yeah, yeah, it was one as well. I found it to be a great leveler because in my early days there was very much a them and us between back and front of house. So there was a lot of arguments across the past. There was quite, the environment. It's continuous and tempers get frayed. Where it was always at the end of the night, you have a beer and it's done. It's squashed. You'll have a laugh together and you leave
Right.
happy. Which I thought, for a young kid, that seemed like a great system, a great way of being. And
Hmm.
yeah, I found it, I suppose, part of my own development when it came to, I don't know, sorting out conflicts and what have you. It was quite a simplistic way of doing. But yeah, no, I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah. I
one of
think.
those. It's been a good, yeah. I think it was a good starting ground for a young kid to come up in.
Hmm. And especially those of us who went to school and learned the craft,
Mm,
it was a whole different kind of environment for us versus someone off the street who came in and was
mm,
asked to do, menial things. But
yeah,
still, once you're in there, no matter whether you're educated or not, you became a teammate. And
yeah,
that's what was so cool about restaurant work.
yeah, yeah. No, I have to say that I did like that. Like I said, there was a hierarchy in the kitchen and everyone knew their place. But outside having a cigarette, you'd find the head chef sat next to the kitchen porter and getting on fine, and everything was good.
You
So
bet.
yeah, no, that's well. I suppose that takes me on to. I mean, do you have any particular stories of, well, either woe or great success that jump to mind from that period for you?
Personally, for me,
Yeah, I mean,
is
well,
that
for
what you're
you
asking?
personally and what you'd seen in that area.
You know, I saw all of the big chefs who were coming through LA, starting up their restaurants. And
Mm,
I remember when Wolfgang Puck was, before he began really operating and being successful at Spago, he would
mhm,
come into a place that I kind of co-ran and created called
mm,
Chin Chin, which is exotic gourmet dim sum. And
mhm.
so Wolfgang Puck would come into our place to get ingredients for his famous Spago restaurant. So, I saw a lot of those people when they were just starting, and it's pretty wild to see where they're at now. All
Mm,
these years later, they've got, frozen food brands and
yeah.
they've got multiple restaurants, got like the Gordon Ramsays of the world.
Mm, yeah. It's That's, I think, one as well. People in restaurant, you've always got good work stories. That's one, again, I think that kept me in as long as it did. It was, there was, you always felt there was something going on. I really did have FOMO when I was on my days off. Even though I was exhausted and, I was worked out, I needed to rest. Half my mind was still what was going on, what was happening, what was I not being part of?
Yeah, that's so true.
Mm, wow.
But I
Well,
dug the glamour, so I
yeah.
wasn't destined to stay in restaurants my whole life, but I was, because I'm food obsessed and I'm
Mm,
trained, I
mm,
got into other facets of food, which is private chefing, personal chefing,
mm,
running restaurants, food manufacturing companies. I've always
mm.
been into the entertainment side of food.
Okay. So is that, I mean, how long a period was that in that, just so I've got context, in that you start in restaurants, were you still working in restaurants while developing your own, your own businesses, etc., or did you move from restaurants to private chefing to, further ventures? How did that look?
Well, in Los Angeles, they have agents who can find you work as like I guess they're called domestic agents.
Hmm.
And I asked if there were any opportunities to cook privately for people. And sure enough, the celebrities and the athletes and people like that all want to have a personal chef, whether that's an ego thing or just a convenience thing for them.
Yeah.
And so I really got into that and I enjoyed that. And I did that for years. And it was shortly after the restaurants, which I was doing from the early 80s to the mid 80s. But once the mid 80s came around, I started cooking for people in the industry.
Hmm. Wow. So, I mean, what were the different pressures and challenges of being a personal chef?
If you fuck up, it's all your fault. You can't blame it on anyone. And so that's
So,
the biggest one.
yeah. Wow. I mean, I suppose it varies, from client to client, but I imagine there'd be quite a sense of entitlement. Is that right, or am I wide off there?
The people who hire folks like me,
Hmm.
is that
Yeah.
what you're asking? Do they have a sense of entitlement?
No, no, sorry. For clarity, I suppose somebody who is rich and famous and what have you would expect at a finger click, oh, make me this, get me this, and I want this. I want no fat. I want no sugar. And all the things that expecting alchemy and now.
Yeah. If they wanted Flaming Cherries Jubilee at 2 in the morning, I would be their guy.
Hmm.
So yeah, I did all that stuff. Anything they wanted because they're the boss, right? And I was
Yeah,
I was the hired help.
yeah. And I mean, how did you cope with that? Like you say, all of a sudden, you're fast asleep, and then the middle of the night, oh, I fancy an egg white omelette. Chef, do that.
It didn't happen very often because shortly after I began, I wouldn't take any live in positions. And
Hmm.
so the kind of positions that I took were like kind of guaranteed
Mm.
time that would start and end at agreed to periods of time. But there
Mm.
were times when I was on the road when the rockers wanted goodies in the middle of the night. And then, because I was right across the hallway in my room, they would ask for something. I would go down to the kitchen inside the hotel and cook for them whatever they wanted.
Hmm. And so, well, I suppose at this time, I mean, I'm presuming you were a single man at the time. I
Yep.
don't.
Oh,
Yeah,
and loving it.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. For a single young guy, that sounds like the dream.
The drug, sex, and rock and roll,
Mm.
it's for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I was going to say, well, I can imagine, but no, I can't. I can't imagine because I was never there. But yeah, I would, I would not be remotely surprised by any of that. So I mean, was it that life that seduced you into entertainment, which, like you said, you've been always into the entertainment and the glitz and the glamour side of it? Was that your passport through?
I don't think that was my passport through, but I always love attention from people and always enjoy pleasing them. So whether
Yeah.
it was pleasing them through conversation or pleasing them through food or
Mm,
pleasing them through helping them,
mm,
I'd be your guy once again. So that was something that really drove me, and I'm still that same person to this day.
Hmm. Well, I mean, again, aside from obvious things like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, how do you feel that the modern day food environment compares to those times in regards, I suppose, culture, attitudes, etc.?
I think that the modern day restaurant is a completely different place nowadays. It feels very corporatized
Mm,
and everything has to do with the money. I think back then, maybe things felt a little more human,
mm,
or maybe I was not really up to speed with what was going on behind the scenes.
yeah,
And I didn't look at it from a business perspective. I looked at it as a gratification perspective for myself.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's what that sounds. I can relate on that score in that it is quite easy to just be focused on what you're doing, and as the food is all important when in reality you take a step back and there's a lot of other
Right.
things. But I feel, yeah, I mean, well, when I moved from England to New Zealand, I noticed a bit of a culture shift. But I found young cooks when I first started they wanted to learn. It was about improving, about getting better, what have you. By the time I'd moved over here, somewhat 10, 15 years later, I
Yeah.
had cooks that had been, they'd been in a 2 year culinary college and they were in their first job. And within 6 months, they were like, oh, I want a pay rise. I should be this, I should be that. They all wanted to be Ramsay, but they didn't want the grind. And,
Right.
you know, I, I don't know whether that's just a generation thing or whether that's just, when earlier on in the piece, cooks weren't given the due respect when all of a sudden they were rock stars, and then you get kids that think, right, well, I've made it already. I don't know, and
Hmm.
yeah, I have to say I agree with the corporatization. When you, I don't know, I found even high end restaurants a lot of the time while you expect a standard of service, I found it quite robotic and quite scaffolded, if that's a word. I don't know about you. I personally nowadays I like I suppose the human element. Yeah, you want a standard of service, but you want to know there's a person, a reasonably genuine person on the end of that for you.
Oh,
How do you
yeah.
feel that looks nowadays?
It brings up your question brings up the whole awkward tipping
Mm,
scenario that we're going through here in the United States.
mm,
And so it seems like no one is happy to help you
mm,
unless they are certain they're going to get a great big tip. And so that's a very awkward sensation for the customer to have to deal with.
mm,
And so I think that that is very similar to just being uncomfortable overall. And how can you really expect to have a nice time with your date, your wife, your husband, your friends, when you know that the waiter or wait person
mm.
is only there for the money and not really because there's
Mm.
gratification on their side?
Okay. Can I ask? I mean, because here it's not really a tipping culture in the same way. Can I ask you to explain when you say the tipping situation that's going on now? What is that about? Because I'm not totally familiar with it.
Everywhere you go in the United States, and I suppose in Europe now as well, but
Mm,
everywhere in the United States you go, you're expected to tip,
mm,
and anywhere from 15%, 20% and up, which is kind of a ridiculous thing because the restaurant owners pay people, you know, two, three, four, $5 an hour and
mm.
expect consumers, the customers, to pay the wages of the people they're not paying
Okay.
by the way of tips. And
Mm,
so that energy is always put onto the consumer, and it's difficult to enjoy your experience
mm.
when you know that that energy is in the air. It's not a comfortable one at
Right.
all.
Okay.
Even when you go into like a coffee house, a
Mm,
Starbucks or whatever,
mm,
they've got a tip jar right there on the counter by the register,
mm,
and they expect tips for pouring your coffee,
mm,
which, in my opinion, I think is a little ridiculous.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's on. I suppose living in England and now New Zealand, in that, yeah, everyone's aware of what tips are. But, I grew up on, that being, well, you've done well, and it's a thank you for your service on the end of it. It wasn't expected. Um, but it's always nice, you always try and do that little bit extra because, well, we all like a bit more in our pocket. I remember
Oh,
the
yeah.
first time I went to the US, um, I was with my dad, um, and I can't remember what it was, and it came out, for tip. And I think he put, say, 10% on because, yeah, fair enough, they tip over here, but we thought it was, a discretionary amount. And the manager ran out into the car park and said, "Was everything all right with the meal?" Yeah, it was fine. Thank you very much. Well, was it really all right? And he put the bill back out. He says, "Well, usually, 15% is the expect." And this is what, 1990?
Right.
So again, I don't know what percentages were expected then because it's not really our culture. But that seems to have crept in a lot more. Like I remember out in London, it was, I suppose, not expected for tips, but then what they started doing, putting on the bill, they'd put a discretionary 10%, which unless you queried the bill, that was 10% of your bill added on, as a tip, which you didn't know about. So it was a bit of, I don't know, a bit of sneaky fucker syndrome, It just
Right.
putting this in without, it wasn't mentioned. So a lot of times, especially, you're on a date or you're in a group, all right, yeah, we'll just divvy it up 4 ways. So then that's like you're accepting that, yeah, we'll take this tip. And yeah, more of that now here on public holidays. You go to the cash register and it's like, oh yeah, there's a 15% surcharge because it's public holiday, which again smacks of what you're saying before. Restaurant owners putting that extra because they have to pay extra per hour for staff, then each transaction, 15% is automatically added on to cover that wage shortfall, which
Right.
I, I suppose it puts you in a difficult position in that I have nothing against workers earning decent and getting paid extra, for busy times and for good work. But I do struggle with the notion that, like you're saying, the onus is put on the consumer to pay what is known as a public holiday. As an employer, you're aware that staff get paid a higher rate on those days. This
Hmm.
kind of thing. And yeah, I suppose as well, I understand that in a food business, margins are not always great. It's often expensive business to be in. But then, at the risk of sounding glib, that's not really my issue.
Right. Well, it's a systemic issue. Here's the problem, Lee.
Hmm,
People direct their outrage at customers like me instead of the system that
hmm,
allows restaurant owners to pay their servers $2 to $5 an hour. The only
hmm,
reason tipping is essential is because restaurant owners are legally allowed to offload their labor costs to the public. I
hmm,
think that's screwy. That's
yeah,
not generosity. That's
hmm,
subsidizing a business model that refuses to pay its own workers.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? I mean, I tip, but let's be honest, equating not tipping 18% with being broke is just blaming the wrong people. The real
hmm,
issue is that the job shouldn't require strangers to make up the other 70%
hmm,
of the income.
yeah,
If you want dignity for servers, aim at the owners and the lawmakers. That's what I always say, because it's
yeah.
a system. It's not the customers who
Hmm.
need to straighten out.
Yeah, I guess that has shocked me. I genuinely didn't realize it was that bad because I mean, yeah, in England and here, while it might be, that you get there around a minimum wage, it is the minimum wage standard as, of all jobs. Like I said, $2 to $5 an hour is I I hasten to use the thing, but that's slave labor. That's
Right.
ridiculous. I mean, that probably doesn't even cover your transport to and from work for half the time, would it?
It wouldn't. So that says a lot about the person who accepts a job as a wait person.
Hmm.
So they often, once again, I keep coming back to this, they're often uneducated or undereducated, and getting a job is easy for someone who looks good
Yeah.
without experience. And so that's why waiters and waitresses have such a big turnover, and that restaurant owners will take them on and pay them. You understand, you're only going to get paid $5 an hour. So you be charming, make a lot of tips. And so
Yeah.
they put the onus on the consumer, which I think is wrong.
Hmm. And does that show? I mean, and again, I'm sort of like here. I've been into a restaurant, and you can often see sometimes where staff and all are interested. You know, if I see one of them that they're playing on the phone behind the bar or whatever it is. But in the US, is there? Because I've seen like TikTok videos and things like that of somebody not tipping the required amount, and like the DoorDash person's thrown the food at the window. I mean, is this a normal thing, or is this just extreme nonsense for clicks and likes?
Somewhere between the two, I think.
Hmm.
Once again, the problem is why take it out on the customer
Hmm.
when you've accepted a job for $2 an hour from your owner who
Hmm.
doesn't want to pay you a decent salary?
Yeah.
When it comes to running a business, every business has issues and problems with the cost of doing business and overhead and all these other aspects of business. Why should restaurant owners get away with
Yeah.
um, getting slaves to do the work? So it's
Yeah.
the system and is perpetuated by the owners and the people who are willing to take the jobs. Definitely not the people like me who just want to have a nice meal.
Yeah. I mean, is there any discussion with lawmakers or employment unions or anything like that?
I think that everybody is interested in what's going on and how awkward it is, but I think the people who are really talking about it are those of us who have been in the industry and have seen it from the back of the house in a restaurant as a worker,
Hmm.
now to a customer and a consumer, and I'm not working there anymore. I can see the awkwardness and the distaste for that kind of a system that doesn't allow for good conversation. I don't think it's ever going to get to a legislation place.
Okay. Wow. No, I mean that really has opened my eyes to something, and as I said, having worked in the industry, I can play a bit more devil's advocate. I know the amount of work that goes into every part of it. I can understand how expensive it is to own and operate a restaurant and what have you, but things like this, yeah, that something just seems so very, very skew with. And I think it's one of those, it is the emperor's new clothes in that everybody can see it, but everyone's still
Hmm.
nodding along and keeping going with the same way of existing. I don't know, very, very
I think
strange.
it's really screwed up, and it's a big topic on my show because I often get people who've been in the food world, restaurant world,
Mm.
whatever, and so that's one of my ongoing questions with guests. I'll ask them, not only
Mm.
what they've eaten today, but I'll say, "What do you think about the awkward tipping situation that's going
Yeah.
on around the country?" And
Mm.
everybody has an opinion about that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's one, and that's one I think as well that having listened to a few of your episodes, a question like that, which seems on the surface, a relatively innocuous question, does touch upon bigger issues, like we're saying about, the right to earn a living wage, something decent like that. And I gotta say, that is one that I do like about your show, that you can use these relatable contexts with people in the
Yeah.
food world to bring about a deeper discussion
Hmm.
about other things. I mean, as we were saying earlier, the episode with Hannah, the self-proclaimed cellar rat, there were a
Right.
lot of her story, yeah, that I listened to, and I listened fondly in parts because there were similes with my own growing up, my own development with in a kitchen background and what have you. And she did mention some episodes of harassment, of sexism, and things like that. Again, which I thought, yeah, that's, these issues in life, as in a culinary background, they're all there. But I thought the way that you dealt with that, that brought it out of her. I liked the style of conversation. I suppose it's one of those, I don't know, like where you have those bar top therapy sessions where two people just talking through. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean to sound demeaning when I say that, because it sounds, I've said it back to myself. But I mean that comfortable two people having a chat, putting the world to rights, and just talking about the stories. I mean, is that one of the intentions of the podcast?
The intention of the podcast, 50 Tastes of Grey, is to reveal the personality of the guest who's on my show. I'm
Mm,
more interested in that person and what they think about stuff than
mm,
about their book or their movie or their career or their family. I
yeah,
want to know about them. And
mm,
so wanting to reveal personalities, I think, is a great way to present yourself.
mm,
Because if, let's say, I have an author on and she has written about any topic,
mm,
resilience or family or losing a child or whatever,
yeah,
you're more likely as the listener to pick up her book or to open up your wallet if you like the person behind the
mm,
book. And so my whole thing is to have a nice social engaging conversation. Stimulating and engaging is what I'm
mm,
always after. And
yeah,
if they like you, they're more likely to listen to you, to watch you, to buy your book, to buy your
mm,
product or service or whatever. So not only that, but this is my social outlet nowadays,
mm,
because when you're isolated and you get to speak to people from all over the world, it's just like you are sitting with a buddy having a drink at the pub.
yeah,
And that's what I love about it. And
mm,
when you get someone on, you get to meet all these really stimulating and smart people. And I
mm,
love to listen. I love to chat, as you can tell,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I love to learn from people. And I just really enjoy that part of it too.
yeah. Yeah, I love that, and I've got to say, it really does come across. Because, yeah, well, once we started talking, I thought, right, I'm going to listen to what this is about, and then when I saw that it was food related, my eyes lit up a little bit, and then having listened, it was different to what I expected. If it was a culinary podcast, I'd expect to hear, I don't know, some chef telling me about their methods and their way of doing things and their brigade. And it isn't that. Like you said then, fair enough, there's a nod to the food that you've cooked, or, the kitchens you've worked in, etc. But the majority was the person, not the person in the whites, as it were. And
Right. I'm
I
more likely
really,
to ask somebody, where they're going to travel to or how they're going to celebrate their birthday than talk about recipes. I'll even ask them, the last time they might have done psychedelics. So
hmm,
I'm not like a food podcast. However, it's very food forward and people like that part about it. So it's
yeah,
not food, but it has food in every episode.
yeah, yeah. That was one, I think, that, well, a big draw for me. And I was very, very keen to talk with you. And yeah, the food is like the overarching part of it, if you like. But then,
And it's a good marketing thing too, Lee. When you think about
yeah,
it, food kind of brings us together when we can
yeah,
sit down and break bread and look at each other and talk about life and family and all the great things in life. It's something we do every day is eat. It's something we think about constantly, multiple times a day. What am I going to eat? What did I just eat? I'm so full or I'm so hungry. It's like it's in us all. So it's
yeah,
such a real, genuine thing that why not bring it into the limelight through a show?
hmm, yeah. And that's. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody, and he was on about inviting me around. He says, "Oh, I don't want to invite you around because I don't want to cook for a chef." And I sort of thought, like, no, well, if you saw what most chefs eat away from work, a lot of you would probably be horrified because it's quick and what have you. I think this was one that Hannah said she eats all the cheapest, nastiest Halloween candy, and she,
Right.
you know, some greasy burgers and things like that. But yeah, for me, I don't know. I think when I started off, I was more about the technical. I was more about stacking food high and making microgreens look the part, that kind of thing. Whereas now, give me a lasagna and a big table with a lot of good people around it. That's where I am. It's that, yeah, that bringing us together, that shared enjoyment, and that's one I do like and appreciate from my time in kitchens. My kids now know how to cook and cook well, but people can come to my place and I can feed them. I can make them smile. That, like you said before, I don't know, I can't remember the word you used. It wasn't validation, but it was something around that kind of thing. That getting positive feedback from people because of your work, it's a nice feeling. A
It
really
really
nice
is.
feeling.
When you can impress people and make them feel good and
Mm.
not take too much credit for it, people really love that.
Well, yeah, this is one similar to, like you said, you used to get the food ready for your friends when they had a date. I remember in my earlier years, the very fact that I could cook, it would be, oh, let's not go out. I'll tell you what, you come round to mine and I'll make something. It was a cheaper date for me, so it saved me going out doing that. But you'd get the wow factor that, oh, a man that can cook, this is a bit new.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, that got me a lot of brownie points. And I suppose, with a face for radio, you've got to play to your strengths, really, haven't you?
Hey, if you can cook, that'll definitely earn you a lot of points while growing up. Let's just put it that way.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, if I can then ask, you made the move to, radio, podcasting, etc. What was the shift like then? When you decide I'm going to move from this area to this area?
Well, we just jumped over a big part of my life, which was
Oh,
I was the restaurant reviewer for Hawaii's largest newspaper for several
oh
years.
well.
And so I went from, being a chef to being a journalist, and
Hmm.
being the restaurant reviewer in Hawaii was like the dream come true, the best job in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
after doing that for a number of years, I started a company called Hawaii Food Tours in
Hmm.
2004, which is all
Okay.
about feeding, educating, and entertaining people on a day to day basis who were visiting Hawaii. And
Hmm.
we did that until 2020 when the COVID shit show happened.
Yeah.
So it was 16 years of day in, day out, entertaining people and educating them about Hawaii's food, the culture, the architecture, the history, and all
Hmm.
of that. So I got to really mix and mingle and rub elbows with people while feeding them and educate them about the life. And
Yeah.
so that was an amazing period of time. And I'd probably still be running that company had it not
Hmm.
gotten crushed in 2020 by
Yeah.
the pandemic.
Wow. So, yeah, like I said, sorry, I wasn't aware of that, and I didn't even ask what took you down to Hawaii in the first place.
Oh,
So,
it was a love thing.
hmm, ah,
Los
okay,
Angeles was going through a lot of turmoil in
hmm,
the early 90s. You might remember the famous Rodney King
yes,
case.
yes,
Everyone can kind of remember that, and the O.J.
hmm,
Simpson thing.
yeah,
Um, so L.A. was just winding out of control and spinning out
hmm,
of control. And so it just so happens I met somebody, and it was a love thing, and she was living in Hawaii. And within 6 months, I gave away or sold everything I had and moved there.
awesome. So, whereabouts in Hawaii are you based? Where are you living?
Honolulu, which is
Hmm.
right near Waikiki, which is
Oh,
the primary tourism center for Hawaii.
yeah,
There are several islands here, but the island of Oahu, where I am,
hmm,
is the highest population concentration.
yeah.
Over 1 million people are on this island alone.
Hmm. Well, if you can, then can you tell me something about the culinary traditions and what have you in Hawaii? Because I suppose other than pineapples, macadamias, and a roasting pig, I'm quite ignorant on it. I'll be honest.
You know, You just mentioned macadamias. Everyone associates Hawaii and macadamia nuts, but the
Mm.
reality is that macadamias, I believe, come from your neighbor, Australia.
Okay. Wow.
That's where they originated. And as far
Mm.
as the food here, because Hawaii was volcanic islands, there weren't a lot of spices and things
Mm.
to flavor foods with. And so wild boar was something that just happened and it was natural.
Mm.
And there were some plants and some veggies like tubers and so on. So the
Mm.
food of Hawaii was very, very simple once upon a time. But now,
Mm.
of course, it's modern like everywhere else and does take advantage of a lot of the tropical goodies that grow here.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean,
But it's a simple
what?
cuisine. It's not a sophisticated cuisine at all.
Yeah. Well, that's all good. I mean, is it is it predominantly seafood based as well? I would have thought being, well, right there on the sea, there would be quite an abundance of different seafood dishes.
Oh yeah, the fish in Hawaii are swimming in warm water, so they're
Mm.
leaner fish, unlike colder waters which produce fattier fish.
Mm.
And so it's a different kind of a fish or seafood experience than a lot of people are used to.
Mm.
But the fish is delicious here. It's just that nowadays it's super duper expensive.
Mm.
Prices are just through the roof.
Okay. Is that just an inflation thing, or is that, is there another forces at work there?
I think inflation has most to do with it, but I think
Mm.
that also scarcity and rarity and just the overall economy
Mm.
and people struggling and the state of the political world, all those things are contributing to prices going up.
Mm. Okay. Well, I mean, what did a day in the life look like on, your food source? Because I can imagine, in addition to the food, that, you've got to be on all the time. There's got to be a lot of,
Right.
a bit of razzmatazz and things like that to keep everybody going. So, yeah, what would it look like?
It would be picking you up at your hotel in a fancy Mercedes van, like a Sprinter van,
Hmm.
chatting with everybody, keeping the conversations going, letting them know what they're passing. It might be a volcano, it might be a hotel, it might have some interesting history and so on. So we're keeping the conversation flowing. And once we pick up everybody and tell some jokes and have some fun, we end up then maybe making 5, 10, 15 stops throughout
Mm.
the day. And then feeding the people who are our
Mm.
guests and just so much fun because people would say, "Oh, spam, that's disgusting." I say, give it a chance because that's
Mm.
definitely a food that's associated with Hawaii.
Yeah.
Um, so it was always fun to turn people on to various different things. I told them to kind of leave their preconceived notions at the door and just
Hmm.
have fun and trust me. And for the most part, we had a lot of converts over the years who really
Yeah.
enjoyed the foods. But of course, we jazz it up with sweets and pastries and noodles
Yeah.
and things that everybody likes. But once
Mm.
in a while, we'd throw in something a little bit oddball.
Mm.
And because that's the foods of Hawaii. And I wanted it to be a genuine kind of organic experience.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the sound of that. Like, and I think giving of yourself in another way, it's, like you've said for years, you like to please people with the cooking, but then now I suppose you're sharpening another facet of your personality, that, yeah, that razzle dazzle, that using food and humour to connect, like we said earlier on, a bit of cheeky banter goes a long way. Feed somebody, they're always going to be your friend, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Hawaii Food Tours was an amazing experience. And during those years, '04 to 2020,
Mm.
I made some of my best friends in the world. And
Yeah.
there would be people from all over the world. They'd be from Europe, they'd be from Scandinavia, they'd be from a lot of Kiwis and a
Mm.
lot of Aussies. And
Mm.
so it was great fun. And I still keep in touch with a lot of those folks.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. So, well, sadly, COVID stuck the knife into that part of
It
your
did.
life. So, yeah, and again, speaking to other restaurant operators that I know and what have you, it was a really, really bleak time. So, you've got your thinking cap on, you've innovated. So, how did that change for you, and how quickly did that happen?
I didn't put my thinking cap on right away. I was
Mm.
licking my wounds
Yeah.
for about a year, 2 years.
Hmm.
Didn't really do much. It was devastating to lose a very successful
Mm.
business, and it was devastating to not have the face to face with 20 people every day.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of me was gone when the business went down. But I ended up writing a book called The Ultimate Eater's Guide, the Hawaii
Hmm.
edition.
Yeah.
And people who still go to my Hawaii Food Tours website will pick up
Mm.
that book because we're not doing the tours anymore.
Mm.
And then after that year and a half or 2 years, I decided I'll get back into podcasting because I'd been doing radio since
Yeah.
the 80s. And
Mm.
so podcasting was an easy, natural transition for me.
Mm. Okay. So, I mean, I've sort of glossed over the radio that you've done in the past. I mean,
Yeah.
was this segments on food shows, or was there another topic? Were there other ways of doing this?
It was just banter type shows. I did a show called
Right.
Matthew the Primetime Chef,
Yeah.
which encouraged listeners to the show to call in and try to stump me. And if they could stump me, I would end up leaving the radio station and driving to their home and cooking them a goodie in the middle of the night. So that was one of the shows in LA that I did.
Mm.
Another show was Midnight Rendezvous, which was
Mm.
just like friends getting together at midnight, and it was all different kinds of subjects and topics. And
Mm.
uh, another show I did, a dining show. So there's always food in my life, but it
Yeah.
wasn't always the primary focus of what I was doing
Yeah.
in radio.
Okay. I must ask though, when you say about listeners to stump you, can you give us an example of what that looked like?
Well, they would ask me questions and just try to stump me about any particular subject. Wouldn't only be food. And sometimes we'd have a random caller who was feeling very saucy and would say, "Would you like to come over and help me do my laundry?" And it just so happened it was a young lady and she sounded nice. And we let her win that one night. But there were serious times too where I
Mm.
went into the middle of an emergency ward at a hospital and I
Mm.
cooked for the staff. There was another time when I went to a police station and cooked for all the cops inside
Wow.
the police station in the middle of the night. A
Mm.
taxi cab driver, I cooked for him. I cooked
Mm.
in the middle of a petrol station, a gas station. You know that little cubicle that they stand in and
Yeah,
take
yeah,
your money? Well, back in the
yeah.
day, they did that. I would go cook for that person. So whoever was interesting to us in the radio station who would
Yeah.
call in and give us a little story, whether they were trying to stump me or not, if we
Mm.
liked them, I'd say, I'll be there in 45 minutes. And then I'd finish up
Wow.
the rest of my show from that location.
Wow. I love the idea of that. Just yeah, that again would be a great way of reaching out. And I guess you probably make somebody's day. That
Yeah.
like
Oh,
you say,
yeah.
to go and cook for a bunch of hospital staff who are
Right.
probably run off the feet. Again, another industry that people work long, tiring hours, often thankless. That's
Right.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, there was some really fun times. That was called Matthew the Primetime Chef, and that was really, really popular. And I just had a blast. So everything
Yeah,
that I've done, I've tried to create and shape it
yeah.
around who I am. And
Mm.
now when I look in my rearview mirror behind me over my shoulder, I go, that fits. That
Mm.
really fits with the thing I did previous. And
Yeah.
so all the things I've done, I'd never really worked a regular kind of 9 to 5 or mundane
Mm.
job. I always wanted to kind of sprinkle in a little bit of attitude and
Yeah.
personality into it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose that all culminates in well where you are now. So you're podcasting now in amongst other things, and well, is this your main focus at the moment, or what else have you got going on to the side of that?
My podcast, 50 Tastes of Grey, and
Mm-hmm.
my writing,
Mm.
which appears on Substack,
Mm.
is what I'm doing primarily. I'm keeping the creative energy going on,
Mm.
and that's that. And so those are the things that really drive me is just doing the creative
Mm.
thing right now.
Yeah, I looked at the Substack earlier. I've not read the story of Gay David yet. But that's
The Gay David story is a great story, and it's true.
hmm. Yeah, no, I had a look through, and I suppose hearing the 50 Tastes of Grey podcast, and then I'm reading this, and I'm actually reading it in the voice, and I suppose it brings it to life a bit more. I don't know whether that's the right way of putting it, but I've got to say, yeah, I've really resonated with your work because, like I'm finding now, I'm having conversations with people all over the world about a myriad different topics.
Right.
And like you said, at the moment, I suppose politically, news wise, so many things you look around and you just shake your damn head. It's a shit show.
Yeah.
But these conversations remind me that there's so much more that we have in common, so much more that connects us. And yeah, I mean, I was talking the other day to a single mother. She's a black woman, lives in California, about an hour outside of Los Angeles, and she's telling me her origin story, for want of better of it. But there's so many things that are the same. We could not be more different, but the experiences and the way life throws things at you, I think, yeah, it's been an amazing way to, I suppose, to open up a bit of a window on the world. And again, that's what I do like, how, yeah, it's food is the starting point, step one, but steps two, three, four, five, and six are nothing to do with it. It's just, yeah, that getting to know you. And again, at the risk of sounding a bit twee, making a friend you didn't know you had.
That's right. That's right. Getting people to show their stuff, to try to reveal them,
Hmm.
not to trip them up, but to disarm them
Hmm.
it's a great feeling when you're getting along with people and having a good time. You could just tell someone's energy when you're speaking to them like this. So this podcast world and this technology is just amazing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's. I've got to say, I mean, it's probably where I get most of my information nowadays, just going about my day, you know, listening to, and yeah, and learning while I'm having fun. It's one of them. I wish I'd had this kind of technology and opportunity when I was at school. I think I would have got a
Right.
lot more done, and a lot. Yeah, I would have, been a lot more educated about things. I don't know.
Yeah, I've often thought, well, why didn't I just start on YouTube 25, 30 years ago when I was doing Love Life Radio,
Hmm.
and that was one of the very first shows that was broadcast on the internet, and that was in 1994 or 5.
Hmm.
And we were doing shows, radio programs inside of a radio station, but it was being broadcast on this thing called the internet.
Hmm.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the reach that it would someday have. And had
Hmm.
I started doing the YouTube shows, back then, YouTube was just like, it looked goofy. It's like,
Yeah.
what is this? I didn't really think much of it. But I could have been now, at that Joe Rogan level, maybe.
Yeah.
That's 35 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And I think, well, I'm really enjoying it. I feel personally like, yeah, I mean, at 50 years old now, that I don't know, this new lease of life, this new way of looking at things, and this new way of seeing the world. Whereas before, we had our restaurant and our local area, and it was quite a small area. Whereas now, like you just said, the reach is phenomenal. I can talk to
Yeah.
somebody in Honolulu now about all kinds of things just as easily as I could shout out my front window. I'm probably having a better
50 years
conversation
ago,
now.
this was science fiction.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's opened a lot of doors, and I'm really enjoying. So, I mean, to bring this one home, can I ask you, in your years in the culinary world, in the broadcasting world, and just around people for so much, what are the bigger lessons learned, or the things that you've taken to heart that you would pass on to the world?
Well, I would think my mom would always tell me, she said, do what you love
Mm,
and everything will take care of itself. And so she started me very young with that. And I guess I followed that. Some people might have looked at me and said I had no direction or was a bum or this or that. But the reality is, you find yourself, if you've got a good head on your shoulders and you do stuff that you really dig, I
Mm.
think everything comes to you. And
Yeah.
so I try to encourage people to do what feels good
Mm.
and see what happens. So
Yeah.
that's what I would put out there.
Mm. No, I love that. And yeah, amongst your writing and your podcasting, is there anything else on the horizon? Are we getting to get more episodes, more stories about, well, people from the day, like you say, another gay David or whomever?
For those who are listening right now, Gay David is a character from many years ago who would always approach you if you had a drink and
Mm.
he would want to take a sip out of your drink. He never bought a drink in his life for himself. He would always drink from friends who had a straw in a cup. And so if you're ever approached by somebody like that, it might be Gay David.
Oh my
You'll
God! No,
have to read the story.
I look forward to reading that and so much more. But I want to thank you for this conversation, and yeah, I've had a lot of fun listening to your work this week in the lead up to our conversation, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to more, and yeah, I appreciate the work you're doing. I really do enjoy it. I'll make sure my friends are aware as well. Obviously, I'll
Oh,
put links to all your
fantastic.
work in the show notes, to the Substack, to the podcast, to the book, etc. But yeah, I want to say a big thank you. It's been lovely meeting you.
Oh, Dave, you know, always so nice to be on new shows. Social Harmony just kind of came into my realm, and I'm so glad that you reached out, Lee, and that we're now new buddies.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Just separated by a little small ocean as well.
Yeah, we're not going to let that get in our way.
Oh, good Lord, no. Good Lord, no. Oh, well, thank you again, Matthew. I honestly, I really do appreciate you. And to all you out
Happy
there, thank
birthday,
you
my
again
friend.
for listening. I appreciate your support as well. If I can ask you to look out for me on Instagram and TikTok under Social Harmony Talk and Facebook Social Harmony Time to Talk. I'll post show links, selfies, information about upcoming episodes, etc. And just, I don't know, general random things that I get up to on a day-to-day basis. I will launch a new episode every Monday evening at 6 p.m. New Zealand time on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if I can ask you, like, follow, share, comment, all of the things across those platforms, I will greatly appreciate it. If you want to join me for an upcoming episode, please send me a message, get in touch with me, and we'll see if we can discuss a future episode. But for now, go well, look after yourselves, and keep talking. Thank you so much for listening.